Good morning. Welcome to First Parish in Waltham. We are glad you are here. Whoever you are, wherever you are in life's journey, you are welcome here. My name is Dan Diano, and I serve as Assistant Treasurer on the Board of Managers. My pronouns are he and his. I'm a gray-bearded, bald-headed white man wearing olive green work shirt in preparation for today's Property Day. Here are this week's announcements. We try very hard to make our service as accessible as possible. We have assisted listening headsets and large print versions of our order of service and hymnals available from our ushers. Our weekly newsletter is mailed out on Wednesdays. Paper copies can be found at the entrances to our building. This week's edition includes details about a vegan potluck taking place later today, the fall fair next Sunday from 12 noon to 3 p.m., and other useful information. Next week will be a busy one. The clothing exchange will be open as usual on Tuesday. Faith formation is on offer on Wednesday. The Buddhist meditation group and choir are on Thursday, and that fall fair is on Sunday. Now, thank you in advance to all the wonderful people who will be staying after today's service to participate in our first Property Day of the year. Drinks and snacks will be available as a number of different outdoor and indoor tasks are tackled. And if you are visiting today or new among us, please ask an usher how you can stay in touch and find out more about the other activities taking place. This is the end of today's announcements. We're so glad you're here. Please check that you have silenced your phone and other noisy devices. And now please turn around and wave to the folks who are joining us on Zoom today.
Maybe prayer doesn't mean talking to God at all. Maybe it means just listening, unplugging the TV, turning off the computer, quieting the mental chatter and distractions. Maybe it means listening to the birds and the insects, the wind in the leaves, the creaking and groaning of the trees, noticing. Who else is out there? Not far away, but nearby. Sitting so still we can hear our heartbeat, watch our breath, the gentle whoosh of air, the funny noises from our own insides, marveling at the body we take so much for granted. Maybe it means listening to our dreams, paying more attention to what we really want from life, and less attention to all the nagging, scolding voices from our past. Or maybe it's all about listening to each other, not thinking ahead to how we can answer or rebut or parry or advise or admonish, but actually being present to each other. Perhaps if we just sit quietly, we'll overhear a peace whispering through the centuries that's missing from the clamor of the moment. Maybe prayer means listening to the silences between the words, noticing the negativity of space, the vast, undifferentiated, and nameless wonder that underlies it all. Maybe prayer doesn't mean talking to God at all, but listening with the heart to the angel choirs all around us. Those who have ears, let them hear. May these words by Gary Kowalski shape this sacred space we create here this morning. Come, let us worship together. Autumn will light our chalice this morning while we hear these words by Reverend Scott Taylor called Always a Voice Arises. As we light this flame, may we hear what it has to say. Come back to your center, it calls. Return to the quiet, it whispers, the quiet we long for and that longs for us. From this stillness, always a voice arises, if we let it. So come, friends, let us listen once again. Let us find that flame inside that guides us back home. Thank you, thank you. Will you rise in body or in spirit for our opening hymn? It's number 1040 in the teal hymnal, Hush. We sang it once last week, right? So we're getting into the swing of it. It's a fun one, and our choir knows it the best. So listen to the voices around you with the white stoles if it's new for you. Work. Will you stay standing for our unison affirmation in your order of service, beginning with the word love? Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Thank you. You may sit. And maybe a mic that needs some love.
How about now? Okay, fantastic. So something you should all know is I am working on my volume. And when my mic is not on, it just makes it that much harder. So thank you for bearing with me. I have a friend that found that funny. So each month here at First Parish, we explore a theme. And the theme for the month of October has been deep listening. Now, we've explored this theme in a couple of different ways. Today, we're exploring this theme through the lens of inside voice. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, that's like what we tell our young folks, use your inside voice. But that's not the direction we're going today. Today, we're talking about that voice that is deep down inside of us. There's a lot of ways to lift up the inside voice. One of my favorite ways, though, is with own voice stories. That's where we take wisdom, but rather than having someone else share that wisdom, we hear it from the perspective of someone's own voice. So with that in mind today, I am not going to share a wisdom story with you, but Chris is. Scooch over, Liam.
Okay. Oh, this is working well. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Chris.
My name is Chris DiNardo, and my pronouns are she, her. Today, in honor of the choir, I have on black slacks and a cranberry top, and I have a little white cane pin on my right hand's shoulder in honor of White Cane Month, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. I am legally blind, and I carry this white cane. A lot of you may have seen me around the building using this white cane, going back and forth and back and forth. And even as I do, you can hear the difference, right? So my cane right now is on the wooden floor, and when I move it this way, it's on the rug. And that gives me a clue about where I am. So, first a little bit about White Cane Day. Not only in the state of Massachusetts, but in the whole country, the month of October has been designated as White Cane Awareness Month. So what does that mean? What do we need to do during White Cane Awareness Month? Well, we who use a white cane are asked to help to educate the public, to help educate the kids, our younger generation, so that when they grow up and they see somebody with a white cane, they won't be afraid of it. They won't be too nervous to ask that person some questions about the white cane. So that's part of the education and awareness about the white cane. So when you see a white cane, maybe in the past you would think, oh, that poor lady, she doesn't see very well. Oh, one thing that we don't like is to be pitied. We want to be seen as independent people just like everybody else. We want to be seen as people who can do things and can be in the world and can move around the world, not just like everybody else, but in our own way. It might take us a little longer to do things, but trust me, we can do just about everything everybody else can do. And this white cane is one of the tools that we use to do that. So, how does this white cane work? Some people say, well, how do you know where you're going? Well, I have to listen very carefully to the messages that the white cane is telling me. Does it talk to me? Can I hear it through my ears? Absolutely not. But the information you see at the end of the white cane, those of you who can see, is a ball. And as I move the white cane back and forth, the ball moves with it. So it's easy to go up over curbs. It's easy to go from the rug to the floor, and it just kind of rolls nice and gently over the surface. So that information goes up through the long white cane and into my hand, up through my arm, and into my whole body. So I'm listening to the white cane through my body. I have to listen to the signals it tells me. It's sending to me. If I'm not listening and I'm walking along the street like this, I could accidentally walk into somebody's driveway. And trust me, I've done that, and it's very embarrassing. And the reason that I made a mistake is because I wasn't listening carefully. I was daydreaming, or maybe in the past I had my headphones on and listening to music. I don't do that anymore. If I'm not paying attention, if I'm not listening to what the cane is telling me, I could walk out in the street, and that's very dangerous, right? So listening to the white cane is very, very important to me. And that's kind of how it works. It communicates, but I have to be listening to what it's telling me. So before I sit back down, I want to leave you with two thoughts. One is, when you see somebody with a white cane, you might want to think of the words independence, resilience, autonomy, can do. And the second thing is that if you have a friend or you know someone who's trying to tell you something, like my cane has become one of my best friends, and I've learned to listen to it. So when you have a friend or someone who's trying to tell you something that you don't quite understand what they're saying, keep listening, keep asking questions, so you can get to know that person better and have a stronger and healthier relationship with that person or friend. And then lastly, don't ever hesitate, grown-ups and young people, don't ever hesitate to come and ask me if you're curious about if you have more questions about how this white cane is used, or about my vision, or anything else you want to talk to me about. Thank you.
Invitation to listen carefully. In 1926, a professor of English set out from his home on the Georgia coast with his hand-cranked cylinder recorder, searching for songs in local black hamlets. He found someone identified as H. Wiley, singing a song whose lyrics told of people in despair and trouble. The lyrics called on heaven for help, and the refrain was, "Come by here." Known as Kumbaya, it has since been torn, twisted, and almost broken. Cultural appropriation, popularization, and desecration have taken their toll on a song deeply rooted in Black Christianity. By the 1960s, the song had become a pop folk sing-along. More recently, the title has been transformed into a way of ridiculing an idealistic search for common ground. It was even used as a slur in a previous American election to mock a candidate and his administration as naive. Turning something from African American spirituality into something used to mock others suggests that the original is not valued, that we don't care about its roots. The people crying in this hymn were those suffering at the hands of lynch mobs. Are we willing to ignore this song in our hymnal, giving the impression that we do not care, that we have no interest in other people's sufferings? In the civil rights era, this song was a call to action. You may not identify with the theology, but people need to know that we care about their history and lived experiences. In voting, headphone malfunction. In voting to adopt the 8th principle, we chose to take action to dismantle racism and other oppressions. Please consider joining me in singing hymn number 401, Kumbaya, with a passion that demonstrates love is the spirit of this church, and that we believe in acting with compassion while recognizing the goal to achieve justice for all. Please rise in body or spirit and join me in hymn 401 in the Grey Hymnal.
And with that, my friends, I will take our chalice children and our junior youth off to faith formation.
We know that there are always joys, sorrows, and complicated mixtures of emotions, some we're not ready to hear yet, or some that we can't quite tease out what they all are, that we cannot share publicly yet because they're so tender. And so we light a final candle in honor of all that we hold still in our hearts. Would you join me in this spirit of prayer, meditation, reflection as your practice? You can ready your body in whatever way works best for you. Some people like to firmly plant their feet on the ground. Some people like to sit up a little taller. No matter how your body is positioned, take a few big, deep breaths and see if you can sink a little bit deeper into your body. With each breath, allowing yourself to hear a little bit more of what your heart's yearning is calling for. When you breathe in, perhaps you remind yourself that you are breathing in. When you breathe out, perhaps you remind yourself in your mind that you are breathing out. Because thoughts from your to-do list or voices from your past, or ways you wish you had handled something differently will try to insert themselves in this time, will try to clamor for your attention. But you can return to your breath and to this moment just by reminding yourself to return to your breath, to let go of the past, even as recently as a minute ago or a breath ago, and to forget about the future for a moment, even as soon as a moment from now or a breath from now. As you sink into yourself, perhaps you find some feelings. Perhaps they are strong. There is nothing wrong with your feelings. There is nothing wrong with how strong they might feel. They are simply information that you can hold for a moment so that you can let them go, so that you can return to your breath and to your body and to this precious, fleeting moment where you are held in community, held in the love of this place, held in the love that undergirds the universe. Whenever you are ready to come back from deep within yourself, from whatever you heard there, whatever that still small voice within you reminded you of, whatever deep longing or need or awareness it reminded you of. Whenever you are ready, maybe you flicker your eyes back open. Maybe you take another, even deeper breath. Maybe you wiggle something in your body to remind yourself of where you start and end. May all that is sacred hear the longings of our hearts. Hear that inner voice that speaks within us. And more importantly, may we hear that inner voice so that it might guide us on our journey home. May it be so. Blessed be. And amen. We will stay seated for this meditation response hymn. It is in your hymnal number 391, Voice Still and Small.
a song whose title translates as "Hear, Smith of the Heavens." The poem was written around 1208 by Kolbeinn, one of the most powerful chieftains of Iceland at the time. It's a prayer asking for strength and mercy. Kolbeinn had not used his power and influence wisely and was somewhat regretting that decision. Sources tell us that he was fatally wounded in a battle the next day after writing this poem. He was fighting. He was fighting to right the wrongs that he had made. Over to Reverend Elka.
Where we hold up the importance of giving to one another and to our communities, where we listen to the inner voices that remind us that we have enough and that we have enough to share with each other. Our offering will now be gratefully given and received.
Good morning. My name is Ken Johnson. I'm a 63-year-old white guy with not much hair. excuse me. And my pronouns, I usually use the he, him ones, so you're welcome with that. I'm here today to read a reading for you called Sometimes It Takes a Little Craziness by Angela Herrera. When you arrive at the store and can't remember why, and you forget the vet appointment and almost miss the dentist even though they called you yesterday, and the bills are late, and your kids need homework help, and you are behind at work and haven't exercised in weeks, and you've been eating fast food while vegetables wilt in your fridge, and your garden is turning into compost, and the one time you tried to cook, you leave the granola in the toaster oven setting the damn thing on fire, and you double book yourself again, and laundry forms mountains around your house, and you begin to look askance at your beloved because you haven't had fun together since you can't remember when, and then just as you were starting to wonder about signs of dementia, you find yourself placing a metal spoon in the microwave and turning it on. Just breathe. Sometimes it takes a little craziness to get your attention. The prophet Elijah fled from 100 pursuers. He hunkered down in a cave on the wind-whipped mountainside, trembled through an earthquake, and shielded his face from a wildfire. He looked to God for the chaos, but when the storms blew over, when the shaking stilled and the flames died down, he crouched, panting and thinking he'd missed it, his heart pounding in his ears. Then he finally noticed the small voice. The holy waits in your world too. Maybe today it will find you in a listening posture, and it will whisper to you. You tumble like a leaf, it will say, and yet by some miracle, you are still here. Now, what is the purpose of that? Thank you.
Can anyone guess the most common phrase that comes out of my mouth in my home? Anyone? Anyone? Let me remind you, in case you don't know, and as a hint, that my children are 10, 9, 7, and 4 years old. Anyone? And all of them appear to be neurodivergent in some way, though we're still navigating the ridiculously long and complicated and stressful process of diagnosis for children. Honorable mentions of the things I say the most often should go to, should we go outside and get some of our big energy out on the playset or a scooter? Or, I can't understand you when your mouth is full. But I think the thing I say most often is, can you please use an inside voice? My house is loud. The volume button on my kids, and the grown-ups in the house too, if I'm honest, can get stuck on high, and all of us have that thing that neurodivergents often have, where we interrupt each other, talk over each other, and then get frustrated and upset when we get interrupted by each other. And add to that the noise of one dog scratching something and the other lapping water from his bowl, and the hum of the lights and the clinks of the heating system and the phone alarm that keeps going off to remind one of us that the thing that we just haven't been able to find time for, I wonder why, and the call of the bus is here that rings through the house if a child hasn't made it outside to catch it yet. There is a lot of noise, and that's just the literal noise. The stray marker under the chair, and the drawing on the wall, and the 4 baskets of laundry waiting to be put away, and the dance shoes that keep getting lost somehow, and the 5th grade leadership meetings that means one kid has to be dropped off early to school, and the permission slips that pile up, and the box of broken things that we save in hopes of one day finding time to fix any of them. There is a lot of noise, and it is loud. And that's before we start talking about the noise of the world, or of our jobs, or of trying to have a social life while raising kids at this moment in history. My inside voice is constantly and relentlessly reminding me of all that is left to do. It's planning and scheming and shaming me for not getting to X or Y yet. It is problem solving or ruminating on a negative interaction or wishing that I had been able to use my own inside voice when I asked my child to put on their shoes for the 600th time, or that I could have just said I was sorry all those years ago. It's thinking about how to respond to something tricky. It's remembering that email that I really wanted to respond to but was called away before I got the chance and then forgot about for weeks. And then it's forgetting it again. To think about my friend who just filed for divorce, or my stepmom's cancer treatments, or my colleagues who just found out that their child is sick, and the children dying each and every day around the world, but most especially in Gaza, and my trans siblings in Florida, and oh right, those hurricanes that reminded us once again of the impending climate collapse. It's drawing connections between the podcast I just listened to and the conversation I had with my friend and the sermon prep that I did a few weeks ago and the pastoral needs that I'm seeing becoming a pattern in my people. My brain never stops. It has ADHD, if you haven't noticed. And it's not just one voice, right? For me, it's several talking over each other all the time, just like my kids do when they're trying to get my attention. Breathe. Just breathe. Clearing our minds are crucial practices for this world we live in, not just for those whose inner voices are quite as loud and complex as mine or other neurodivergent folks, but we know that meditation is an ancient practice and that many different peoples have found various ways of talking about spiritual practices with the goal of clearing and opening our minds to the holy that is speaking from within us. There is a voice underneath the noise of our lives that we can hear only if we clear our minds a little bit through spiritual practices like mindfulness or meditation or contemplative prayer or magic, whatever helps you clear your mind of the mess so that you can hear yourself. Listen closely to yourself. Listen to your true self, I should say, your inner voice that points you home. It doesn't always speak in words, but our lives these days, with all the busyness, in part because the world pushes us towards busyness, and in part because we're culturally numbing in so many ways in order to survive some of the harm and trauma we might find in our bodies if we slow down. And those of us with marginalized identities have the most of that and the most trouble finding space because of all the systemic ways in which space gets harder and harder to find and create. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. It's as simple and as hard as that. In his book, No Mud, No Lotus, The Art of Transforming Suffering, Buddhist monk, teacher, and writer Thich Nhat Hanh, perhaps the most famous Buddhist of all time, writes, "When you come back to yourself and breathe mindfully, your mind's attention has only one object, your breath. If you continue to breathe in and out mindfully, you maintain that state of presence and freedom. Your mind will be clearer and you will make better decisions. It's much better to make a decision when your mind is clear and free, rather than in the sway of fear, anger, and worries." Now, I imagine many of you know some of the basic and beautiful meditation that he teaches. It sounds so simple and easy the way he talks about it, right? And we know it's not quite that simple, but yet somehow it is. For many, it's hard because clearing our minds and being able to hear what our body and spirit are trying to communicate to us is painful given the feelings we have shoved down there. But Thich Nhat Hanh argues that mindfulness and the practice of quieting the mind, breath by precious breath, is also a necessary part of healing those feelings, the trauma and the pain in our bodies that we will otherwise continue to pass along to future generations if we don't find the space to feel them. And that causes us more suffering the longer we try to numb them rather than embrace them. Listening to our own still, small voice coming home to ourselves is the way to ease our own suffering and create the conditions in our lives for happiness, for the joy that is ours. But this doesn't have to look only like traditional meditation, of course. There are lots of practices that clear our minds and bring us home to ourselves so that we can hear the most true and most loving voices that live within us. In her book, Untamed, contemporary writer, podcaster, and founder of Together Rising, Glennon Doyle describes a process she calls sinking into herself and her body in order to hear her inner knowing. She learned it slowly and started learning it in middle age because women are especially socialized to hear all of the outer voices before hearing those within. But each time she practices it, she says, she learns to find that place with more ease, more comfort, quicker even. And while she uses different words than Thich Nhat Hanh, it sounds almost exactly like the mindfulness practices that he describes in his life's work again and again. I've tried to sit in meditation so many times. I've tried mindfulness practices of every imaginable sort. Well, not every, but a lot. I have tried and tried and tried to find a stillness in that way. And for me, the best way is to move. In college, I discovered yoga, and 10 years later, I was teaching it. It is still the best way for me to clear my own mind. And in seminary, I discovered a movement meditation that is more dance-based, in some circles called Dharma Jam, and began leading groups of folks moving their bodies however we wanted to world music in safe spaces. In both cases, I only taught or led such groups because I needed them so deeply myself, and teaching it felt like the best way to have access to the practice in the busyness of the world. And I knew that the options for actual quiet in our bodies and minds were very limited, and that I wanted to pass on one that worked for me. Once I found the way to really start to quiet and clear my mind, each taste of it, each tiny taste of it, made me yearn desperately for more. I knew, and I was awakening this knowing from deep within myself, just how crucial it was, how much we all need the noise to cease sometimes, even if just for a moment, so that we can rest our heart from the brokenness of the world, rest our nervous systems from the relentless stress of living here. And I knew that the only way to hear what is calling us forward into more wholeness and love and joy is to create space to listen to that still, small voice within all of us. And that hearing that voice, or picking it out from the crowd of all the voices in there, also includes some pretty judgmental and mean voices, at least in my head, required spiritual practices that allow our minds to slow, to quiet, to stop thinking quite so much and so hard. Hearing that voice is listening compassionately to ourselves. Thich Nhat Hanh puts it this way: by listening compassionately to yourself, you have started to come home to yourself. Going home requires only sitting down and being with yourself, accepting the situation as it is. Yes, it might be a mess in there, but we accept it because we know we have left home for a long time. So now we're home with our in-breath and our out-breath, our mindful breathing. We begin to tidy up our homes. Did anyone notice the key word in that first sentence? By listening compassionately. Not just listening, but listening compassionately. That means giving yourself a lot of grace, talking back or simply ignoring the mean and judgmental voices in there. It also means listening to the voices that say, you need to seek accountability and repair here. The ones that are fueled by honest guilt that you missed the mark somewhere and call you to restoration and relationship where it is needed, like the voice that spoke to the composer of our offertory. This means opening your heart to the whole mess of what you find in your home so that you can heal the voices that are not yours, but were put there by someone who didn't know how to love you. And so that we can embrace the voices that are seeking to teach us where we must go for this next part of our journey. Believe me, I know how hard it is to carve out space in our lives, to attempt to sit still even for a moment, or to move in a way that might clear our mind, to hear that voice and to listen closely enough and compassionately enough to tell the voices apart. But the more we can practice clearing our minds, even if just for a moment, the easier it becomes, especially when we really need it. And that still small voice will start to scream if you don't listen. It will get your attention with a spoon in the microwave, or an illness, or a literal fall. It will sing louder and louder if you refuse to hear it, sending messages through your body, your emotions, your actions, your sleep, your anxiety, and on, because that still small voice could be called source with a capital S, truth with a capital T, wisdom with a capital W, or even maybe God. And its purpose within us is to point us towards our greatest fulfillment, to help us get free from the voices that tell us that we can't or shouldn't or will never have what we desire or need or will never be enough, to get us free from all of the limitations we place on ourselves or were placed on us by others, but that we then continue to enforce. And its purpose is to get us free and strong enough to break out of the limitations that are placed on us by society or culture or someone in our lives who is listening to the wrong voices inside their heads, telling them to be scared or to try to control things. Our still small voice just wants us to be happy, but just wants everyone else to be too. It wants us to share our gifts with the world in the way that is ours, to have purpose and love and belonging and joy, and to share that. When we listen to ourselves fully, we know just where our life is calling us. In addition to practices like mindfulness that clears our minds or helps us hear that inner listening, listening to each other can also make us listen better to ourselves. I'm honored by the pastoral care work that I get to do in my job because I get to listen to people who are trying to sift that voice out of the noise within and around them, and reflect back what I'm hearing, what I notice, how much I believe their inner wisdom is ready to show them the way. And by listening to them, or you now, in this way, I am forever changed. In truly listening to someone else, to understand, not to rebut, right? We understand ourselves more deeply. When we listen to each other with our whole heart, we hear our inner voice much more clearly. And from the spiritual work of deep listening, I can hear myself more fully, because despite our desire to separate things into discrete boxes, everything is in fact quite connected. And we are impacted by witnessing the holy speak in the lives of those around us. We become more free in the ways that we need when we experience or witness the liberation of others from the voices that would tell them that they will never measure up or that fear should be in the driver's seat. When we truly listen, We find universal truths amidst the particularities of a story that amplifies our own inner voice. 20th century Indian philosopher and orator J. Krishnamurti puts it this way: when you listen so completely to another, you are also listening to yourself, listening to your own problems, to your own uncertainties, to your own misery, confusion, desire for security. We are talking together about what human beings are, which is you. When we listen to each other deeply, we can hear all of the ways that we are so connected, all of the things we have in common. We hear our feelings that we have too, and we know that we are never alone, and we can feel more held by the web of connection between all of us. Maybe there is too much noise to be able to make space to deeply listen to each other and bring more practices that clear the clutter out of our mind. Maybe that can feel overwhelming, but I'm trying to do what I can, and I know you are too. Breathing in, I know that I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know that I am breathing out. Weaving the practices that bring more stillness into us, whatever that looks like for each of us, makes the space in our lives for this crucial work. Listening to one another deeply so that we can better hear ourselves, and learning to listen compassionately to ourselves so that we can better sift through what we hear from within, so that we can listen to that which guides us towards ourselves, towards our happiness, towards love and wholeness and joy. These are not easy tasks that I have set before us today, and yet they will change our lives each time we practice them, and ultimately bring peace to us all, because people who have healed create healing in the world. Because when we listen to those inner voices, sometimes the trauma within us is from harm we have caused, or even harm our ancestors have caused. The composer of our anthem, late in his life, felt overcome by the enormity of the trauma within him from the harm he had caused in his life, and he sought forgiveness and redemption. And so much of what is wrong about this world is unhealed trauma, often generational trauma, that causes folks to continue to cause harm. So really, healing that trauma is justice work in this world. And healing our own trauma, whether or not our trauma causes anyone harm but us, will lead us to more healing of more trauma in the bodies around us. There's a ripple effect, and so on and so on. This is the way to peace. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. So will you practice sinking with me, or moving meditation, or whatever way you have found to calm the noise so that you can hear where you are being held? Will you listen deeply to yourself, and will you listen deeply to each other so that you can hear yourselves more clearly? When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. Our closing hymn is 1009, Meditation on Breathing. You get that from the cues I gave you, for those of you who know it. And we're going to do it so that it builds and then falls back down. So let me explain how that means. There are 3 different parts to this hymn, and they all layer on top of each other. There's a drone that Scott will do, there's a melody that Emma will do, and there's a descant that I'm going to take. We're going to start with the drone. We're going to all sing the drone. Whoever wants to sing the drone can sing the drone. And then whoever wants to stay there can stay there. We're going to, all of us who want to, move to the melody. And then whoever wants to move to the descant can move to the descant. And then we're going to, when I'm done singing the descant, I'll go like this. And we'll all move to one of these 2. And when Emma's done, she'll go like this. And we'll all move to the drone if we want to. And then we'll close from there. Make sense? Yeah? Please rise in body or in spirit and join us in 1009, Meditation on Breathing. Yeah? breathe. Yeah. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out.
When I breathe
Breathe
in,
in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
when I breathe in,
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace.
when I breathe out,
When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
when I breathe in,
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace.
when I breathe out,
When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
when I breathe in,
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace.
when I breathe out,
When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
when I breathe in,
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace.
when I breathe out,
When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
when I breathe
In, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Oh, thank you. Beneath the Hustle and Bustle is also by Angela Herrera, the author of our reading. And I leave you with her words. Beneath the hustle and bustle, beneath the streams of thoughts and clambers and chatters over the landscape of our inner world, beneath our habits of momentum and stirring, there is stillness deep and peaceful, the place where creation begins. Who lives there? We know her by many names: truth, love, God, wisdom. We turn our hearts toward her face, toward her mystery, and bring our prayers of awe, of longing, of hope, of exhaustion. She holds us in our grief and anger, in our disappointment, our loneliness, and our rebirth. From her viewpoint, she sees us, children of the stillness, children of love. She sees our place in the order of things joined together in the larger story, and she invites us again and again into living, invites us to loving, invites us into being loved. May we be restored to wholeness and blessed with peace. May all those whom we encounter receive this blessing through our being in the world. You are a blessing. Go now and bless this beautiful and broken world. invited to coffee hour through these doors. If you don't know the way, ask someone, they'll show you.